Oh, The Legend of Zelda. Iconic, historic, for many the high watermark of video games, and an astonishing series notable for its consistent excellence across the decades. Assuming, that is, you choose to forget some of the more obscure games from the Zelda timeline, those unremembered outliers that are, by turns, bonkers, bad, or unbelievably creepy. You'd be forgiven for forgetting these Zelda games ever existed, and to be honest, Nintendo probably would rather you did.
Dyras came straight from the crater till I boarded the vent. Used a skull for a latch and not one Dyras figured it out.
There have been so many great Zelda games over the years that you'd think it would be easy for the memory of Link the Faces of Evil for the Philips CDI to fall out of your brain completely. And yet there's something about this whole situation that really lodges in the mind.
Gee, it sure is boring around here.
My boy, this piece is what all true warriors strive for.
I just wonder what Ganon's up to.
Zelda was licensed to Philips as a compromise when Nintendo binned a co-project to build a CD add-on for the Super NES. Thus, the Philips CDI console saw the release of 3 official Zelda games.
But Father, what if something happens to you?
I'll take the Triforce of courage to protect me.
The first 2 of those 3 were Link the Faces of Evil and Zelda the Wand of Gamelon, and both were notable for their use of fully animated cutscenes. And while the ambition was admirable, I think we can agree this is too fully animated.
Your omnipotence, have mercy!
After you've scrubbed all the floors in Hyrule, then we can talk about mercy.
Are these the Faces of Evil, Link? Because they're making me pretty sad. We're not causing players to recoil from the screen in horror or frantically create memes. Link the Faces of Evil was a 2D platformer, which doesn't sound very Zelda, but in fact borrowed the idea from Nintendo's Zelda 2. Unlike Zelda 2, however, it was rubbish, and you could never be sure you weren't moments away from kicking off another horrifying cutscene.
Lamp oil, rope, bombs? You want it? It's yours, my friend, as long as you have enough rubies.
Wand of Gamelon was no better, but is more interesting from a historic perspective for being the first game to make Zelda the protagonist, when she's forced to step up after both Link and the King vanish on a mission.
Enough. My ship sails in the morning. I wonder what's for dinner.
Oh boy! I'm so hungry, I could eat an Octorok!
Hard to believe these guys were first in the batting order, to be honest. In the end, Zelda saves both the King and Link, but not before putting Link to shame with her absolute lack of pity towards evildoers.
You've killed me!
Good.
Yikes. Nintendo, we want this Zelda playable in Breath of the Wild too. Both Link, Faces of Evil, and Zelda, Wand of Gamelon are very much deemed non-canon, but we cannot escape the fact that these were officially licensed Zelda video games. Also, while they're truly dreadful, and I might be putting my reputation on the line by saying this, there was one good thing about these games, and that's the music. I mean, come on, this kicks ass. And surely even the hardcore Zelda fans won't be too furious if I humbly suggest the Wand of Gamelon world map theme absolutely slaps, will they? Oh god, the hardcore Zelda fans, they're coming in through the walls! No! No! Get up! I'm sorry! Ah!
君たちの家の BS アンテナで受け取られ、チューナーを通してサテラビューへと送られる。そしてたくさんの楽しいゲーム番組をスーパーファミコンが
Imagine if you could experience The Legend of Zelda not just via your games console, but through your TV, over the airwaves. Wouldn't that be good?
Well, excuse me, princess.
No, it would not. And yet, undeterred by Link's first foray into the world of television, Nintendo did indeed make Zelda games available over the airwaves, via a satellite modem for the Super Famicom called Satellaview, only ever available in Japan.
Satellaview.
Several Zelda games were made for the Satellaview, with the first being BS Zelda no Densetsu, broadcast in August 1995, with the BS standing for Broadcast Satellite, before you get any ideas. That was followed later by the Link to the Past-alike Inishi no Sekiban, which translates as Ancient Stone Tablets. No Densetsu resembled the first ever Zelda game in many ways, but with one earth-shaking difference. You didn't play as Link and instead controlled a nameless boy or girl. So if you ever wanted to imagine how a Zelda game would play if Link had a sweep backwards baseball cap, this is your opportunity. Even more massive, this was the first Zelda game to feature voice acting, thanks to the Satelliview's SoundLink feature, which streamed a full vocal track alongside the game, with voice actors discussing the plot or giving players directions. The way SoundLink worked meant you could only play the game during broadcast times, and against the clock too, with new maps and plot details released episodically, a bit like Fortnite but with less flossing and more waving a net around. This transmission method also means that groundbreaking audio is now lost to the ages. And indeed, the closest you'll get to these obscure Zelda games today are fan-made translations, heroically cobbled together from bits of recovered code. The chances of these surreal Zelda games ever getting re-released is effectively zero, which is a shame because for all the weird changes, there were still dungeons to explore and monsters to murder. Nintendo is content to tease us though, going so far as to add the Spacesuit Mario War in the Satellaview ads to Mario Odyssey. And yet, no baseball cap in Breath of the Wild. Now that's BS Zelda.
If you ask us, the right kind of game to be made starring Tingle, the red-nosed, full-body tights-wearing weirdo from the Zelda series, is absolutely no game whatsoever. But what do we know? Maybe there was quite a lot of demand for the Tingle spin-off games like Tingle's Balloon Fight DS or the cash-collecting RPG freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land. The one thing we're absolutely certain nobody was asking for, however, was a Tingle-centric dating simulator heavily themed around the Wizard of Oz. How then to explain the existence of Irozuki Tingle no Koi no Balloon Trip, a game whose name apparently translates as Ripened Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love? This luridly colourful RPG was only released in Japan, though there is a fan translation into English. In the game, a lonely 35-year-old man is transported to another world when he buys a book on TV that promises to make him a hit with the ladies. In this magical realm, he becomes Tingle, the unsettling, gyrating quest giver you probably spent the last several Legend of Zelda games going out of your way to avoid. Tingle teams up with a lion, a tin robot woman and a scarecrow and travels a yellow brick road on a quest to dance with a princess, but not before he masters a relationship building technique that is horribly known as the love push. Tingle must use this love push, which largely involves giving presents, to impress female characters around the game world. The game is so incredibly weird and frequently creepy that you could easily forget it's anything to do with The Legend of Zelda, except for the fact that Tingle is on screen 100% of the time, plus the occasional coy references to remind you which highly respected series this game is technically part of. The lesson here is that it's time to stop putting Tingle in games other than the Legend of Zelda games, and when Nintendo stops it, we promise to stop it too. Get away from that ocarina, Tingle! You do not have the right to use that. That is for Link. What did you take it from Link? What did you do to Link? I swear to God, Tingle, if you hurt him.
If there's one Zelda game fans have been clamouring for years to get a sequel, it's the dark and moody Twilight Princess, which has a gritty aesthetic that sets it apart from all other games in the series. Well, Twilight Princess fans, you'll be delighted to know there is another Twilight Princess game, and here it is. Oh, you meant a game that isn't just the puzzle game Picross. Well, you should have specified. What are we, mind readers? My My Nintendo Picross, The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess is an odd little puzzler that, incredibly, was never available for purchase. Instead, it could only be acquired through the My Nintendo Rewards scheme, for a grand total of 1,000 platinum points, an amount of virtual currency that makes my circa 150k Nook miles look like pocket change. The game itself tasks you with using your brain to fill in squares on a board with, as Midna explains, numbers along the top and sides serving as clues as to how many squares on a row or column need to be filled in. Fill in all the right squares and you'll find you've drawn a cute picture. My Nintendo Picross, The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess might have more colons in its title than it has modes of gameplay, but by all accounts, this was a perfectly serviceable puzzle game. And yet, the hugely popular Zelda license has been applied to so relatively few games outside the main series, it's kind of baffling that Picross was picked as worthy of getting the Twilight Princess treatment. That said, absolutely none of these Picross puzzles are solved to reveal Tingle, so I guess that's a perfect 10 out of 10.
They are all around us. Millions of Barcode warriors and wizards waiting to fight. Waiting for Barcode Battler to free their awesome power.
Anyone who's worked in retail will know you can make a perfectly serviceable game out of scanning barcodes. Seeing how far away you can hold the barcode before the scanner stops working, for instance. Or guess the price of the item, and if the customer gets it right, they get the item for free. Heads up, that second one will get you fired. But it goes to show the potential of the Barcode Battler handheld, released in the early 90s, which asked players to scan the barcodes off of special cards or everyday household items to generate virtual heroes and monsters with attack power and defense, or power-ups for those fighters, all represented as a series of numbers on an LCD screen. Now, I know what you're thinking, that sounds boring as hell, but the Barcode Battler was a hit in Japan, so much so that Nintendo made a special licensed Legend of Zelda barcode set, based off the then recent A Link to the Past. In this set of cards, you got several hero links to scan in, plus a wealth of power-ups taken from the game, and a horde of monsters to fight too, all with barcodes that, once scanned, would let you run simulations of Link's heroic battles. You just had to use your imagination. A lot. Alright, it doesn't sound like that much fun, but bear in mind that in 1992 your options for handheld Zelda games were severely limited. Although, imagine saving up all your pocket money on this and then the next year Link's Awakening comes out on the Game Boy. Ouch. Guess we'd better ask for that job back.
With all the accessories produced for Nintendo's motion-controlled Wii console, it's a wonder the planet isn't drowning in discarded plastic. Oh, it is? Oh. There was the Wii Wheel, the Wii Balance Board, a million third-party plastic Wii Sports golf clubs, and of course, the Wii Zapper, which may sound like what a Scottish person might call their taser, but was actually a plastic housing for the Wii Remote and Wii Nunchuck, built to turn those two controllers into something resembling a gun. This peripheral was not terribly well received, with some sites calling it less accurate than just using the Wii controller. Luckily, Link was on hand to make everything better, with a pack-in Zelda game that turned Hyrule's hero into a largely stationary murder machine. The game was brutally short, completable in as little as a single hour, but did walk you through 3 game modes, including defending against waves of enemies, Ranger levels, where you move through a stage crossbowing monsters with a deadly precision that will make you say, "Hey Link, maybe keep hold of this crossbow for the main games? I think it would make them a lot easier." And target shooting stages, which are exactly what they sound like, and could involve shooting targets over the idyllic Orden village, or shooting targets that Gorons are holding over their groins. Wow, those Gorons really trust Link's aim. The game is charming for the most part and draws on familiar Zelda locations and enemies, although we don't remember the fruit balloon from any of the proper games. But it never successfully deals with the central question of why Link, the sword and shield hero of Hyrule, is taking a break from his preferred method of combat to mow down wolves with an automatic weapon. That said, Link's crossbow training isn't nearly as weird as it could have been. Zelda creator Shigeru Miyamoto worked on the game, and initially proposed explaining Link's possession of a gun with a Terminator-style story about a time warp. The team immediately vetoed this amazing idea, which frankly is an object lesson in why sometimes, Miyamoto, you gotta pull rank. The world needs Terminator Zelda.
And so I found this champion of strength and courage. It is you, Princess Zelda. With this magic pendant, go forth, and with each sign you gather, so too will you gain knowledge. Find your magic wand, use it wisely, and listen to your allies along the way. Go now, my princess, restore the celestial signs and rescue Link.
Remember we mentioned there were actually 3 Zelda games developed for the Philips CDI? Well, Zelda's Adventure is the third, and unlike Faces of Evil and Wand of Gamelon, this obscure Zelda game doesn't use the same horrible cartoon animation. Which might make you feel more optimistic about how good it's going to be, until 30 seconds in when you see they've spelled Ganon wrong.
The Scroll of Shermak, bearer of sad news these many years ago.
In place of those freaky animations, expect freaky fake beards, as Zelda's Adventure deploys FMV sequences to tell you the story.
Hurry now. You must travel to a place of festival. Rumor tells it is found near the great forest to the north.
Which concerns Zelda herself on a quest to rescue Link and bring peace to the land of Tolomak? Oh, it's Camelot backwards. Fine. Unfortunately, the actual game is considerably less enjoyable than these cutscenes, somehow. Its top-down aesthetic may be superficially closer to the main games, but blurry graphics and punishing loading times made even wandering off to the side of a screen feel like a substantial chore. Unsurprisingly, Zelda's Adventure was critically panned upon its release in 1994, and remains perhaps the worst game to ever bear the official Zelda title on the box, even factoring in the other 2 more infamous CDI games.
Isn't it lovely? Bring some fairy dust and I'll make it a magic cloak.
It is certainly closer in some ways to the Zelda series we all know and love though. For instance, Link doesn't talk in this one, but that might be because he's only in it for a single unmoving frame at the very end when Ganon is defeated. The game doesn't have much music either, so it can't even claim to have a banging soundtrack. I mean, this gameplay, it's missing something. Okay, yes, now we're cooking. This is Zelda.
So those were some of the more obscure Zelda games that you may or may not have heard of. Which ones do you remember? Let us know in the comments down below, as well as how many nightmares the CDI games gave you. I'm not going to sleep for the next week, so that'll be fun. But if you thought this video was fun, please do give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe if you haven't already, because we make loads of videos like this. We also do fun live streams. We talk a lot about Nintendo on here, so maybe you'll enjoy that. Either way, hopefully see you again in another video. Thanks for watching. Bye!